Salam sejahtera, anda bersama saya Rizal Zulkapli dan ini Niaga AWANI. Pada awal Julai, Bank Negara Malaysia lapor terima 29 permohonan untuk Lesen Bank Digital di bawah Akta Perkhidmatan Kewangan 2013 dan Akta Perkhidmatan Kewangan Islam 2013. Bank Pusat itu berkata sehingga 5 lesen akan dikeluarkan dan permohonan yang berjaya akan dimaklumkan pada suku pertama 2022. Tambahnya, pelbagai pihak telah menghantar permohonan untuk mendapatkan lesen Bank Digital termasuk bank, konglomerat industri, firma teknologi, penyedia perkhidmatan e-dagang, syarikat fintech, koperasi dan beberapa kerajaan negeri. Laporan CNBC sebelum ini sebut yang COVID-19 telah tingkatkan penggunaan transaksi digital. Menurut Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Persatuan Transaksi Elektronik Jody Kelly yang dipetik CNBC, trend penggunaan transaksi digital dijangka terus meningkat. Dan terkini, Jabatan Statistik Malaysia lapor transaksi e-dagang turut meningkat 30% tahun ke tahun kepada 254 bilion ringgit pada suku pertama 2021. Untuk tahun 2020, transaksi e-dagang turut meningkat 32% kepada 896 bilion ringgit. Hari ini, kita ingin membincangkan berkenaan perbankan digital dan hala tuju serta cabaran pasaran dan pemain sedia ada bersama dengan Pengarah Serantau untuk Asia Back-Base Riddhi Dutta, Ketua Pegawai Strategi Kumpulan RHB Dr. Siew Chan Cheong dan juga Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif CIMB Digital Assets dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Kumpulan Touch and Go Effendy Shahul Hamid. Saksikan rakaman temu bual ini. Thank you for joining us. We have with us the Regional Director for Asia Back-Base Riddhi Dutta, Group Chief Strategy Officer of RHB Banking Group, Dr. Siew Chan Cheong, and Chief Executive Officer of CIMB Digital Assets and the Group CEO of Touch and Go, Effendy Shahul Hamid. Let's start with Riddhi. Riddhi, how have customers' transaction habits changed, especially during the MCO? And what are some of the gaps that you think the industry can do better to narrow?
Yeah, good morning and thanks for having me here. I think from a consumer behavior perspective, fortunately or unfortunately, most of the times we see that something has to happen outside the purview of the human nature, which forces this change in consumer behavior. You go back to, if you look at two of the largest economies in Asia, China and India, both these countries where they are today in terms of digital banking and digital payments, even they were forced by something that happened, the SARS outbreak in China in 2003, and then the demonetization in India in 2016, which really changed the consumer behavior in these countries. I think a similar trend is happening for rest of Asia as also in Malaysia, where because of the current pandemic and the MCO and people being forced to operate from their homes, more and more consumers are doing things online, whether it's onboarding themselves, with the new eKYC guidelines that have been established by BNM. So whether it's onboarding themselves, doing transactions digitally, and also potentially taking the entire, lifestyle banking concept into their super apps, right? So I think yes, the consumer trends have changed, the consumer behavior has changed. But in terms of the gaps that the industry can do better, I think the major gap that I personally see, not only in Malaysia but also across the rest of Asia, is focusing probably a little bit more on the SME and MSME, which I think the BNM is trying to address through some of these new potential digital banking licenses, where they want the applicants to focus on SMEs and MSMEs. So that is one. And the second is also, how do you digitize more and more on the credit piece, on the lending piece? While it's still the biggest, business line for any bank, but on that particular, area of operation, we have seen that not enough has happened from, a digitization perspective. So I think those are two gaps where the industry can definitely do better from a business perspective.
Now using more internet banking facilities, now that you can bank everywhere and do digital transactions, even for just, say, a can of soft drink.
Yeah, I mean, that's bound to happen, right? I mean, when you can't step out, when you can't go and meet people, when you can't go out in the branch or go to a superstore, you will have to use these digital internet mobile banking facilities. So that's a given. But I think what's important is that, and this is more of a challenge for banks, is how do they differentiate themselves by probably offering the same sort of thing, but making it more personalized for customers, making it more adaptive for customers, and meeting the customer expectation in terms of, let's say, speed and convenience. So instead of going digital just for the sake of going digital, I think banks need to focus on their customers. I'm pretty sure my fellow panelists in their particular capacity are definitely doing that. But from a larger perspective, right, better engage customers through high-impact business processes. I mean, specific, starting all the way from initiation, how do you onboard and originate customers, how do you drive sales, and how do you service customers. So the final point that I'm trying to make here is that to succeed in customer engagement, to drive more of these internet, mobile banking engagements, banks must understand the role that their banking platform, the underlying platform, plays in ensuring hyper-personalization, and if their current respective technology tools are fit for the job, or they're only there for a short-term perspective.
And Dr. Siew, how are banks adapting to these changes? Do they have the support needed for these changes to happen immediately and also to address the needs of these customers?
Yeah, so banks are really doing a few things. I would say broadly, two really for the customers and two internally. So the first one is, I think, banks need to be able to allow our customers to do banking in a mobile phone, as an example, right? So customers should be able to get a bank account, do payments, check their balances, make investments, managing their insurance and so on in a phone or in a laptop. Second thing that I think banks also adapting to do is rather than only offering banking services, banks should also look at how we can let our customers to run their business, whether it is a personal business or a company business, through a laptop or a phone. This means that you have to work with different ecosystem players in offering non-banking products. As an example, if an SME, you should be able to connect your accounting activities, payroll, inventory management, all these different digital operations with the banking services. So that as far as the SME owners is concerned, you're not only actually doing banking, you actually have something to help you to run your day-to-day business, and therefore you have more time to think about how to grow your business. So we should basically allow our customers to run their business through a phone or a laptop. Now, the third and the fourth one is more internal, right? Obviously, in order to offer these different digital services and make life more convenient and easy for our customers, banks need to think about how they can use data analytics to offer very personalized services. So it's not only get it through digital means, but also quickly at the right time and the right product that is customized. For example, mortgage interest rates are usually quite standard. When you go to different banks, they're usually a range. But customers are very different. You have different profile of customers. So can we have technology to use big data and data analytics to offer something very personalized for our customers? And bank requires that kind of technology and talent to offer that services. The last one is the key one. Now we're actually moving away from just building branches and having paperwork, a lot of processes. It means that the culture of how we run the bank, how we manage our people, will have to be relooked. So that is the main things that the bank really have to look at, other than just thinking about offering services. But you need to have a group of people with the right culture to support that. Now, in order to do all this, sure.
Sorry, Dr. Siew, just continue.
Yeah, I think the second part of your question is about whether we got the right support. I mean, as someone working in the bank, I would say that yes. I think that is very clear, specifically from regulators in Malaysia, as an example. Bank Negara has already rolled out a number of major initiatives to enable banks to accelerate kind of digital offering and differentiations. The two main ones that is, for example, eKYC guidelines, which means that now there's a regulations to allow banks to onboard customers 100% digital. The second one is the digital banking framework that has been announced end of last year, whereby there will be up to 5 new digital banking licenses that will be issued by the regulator to allow new players into the market to experiment new way of running banking and offering banking services. Now, that is very significant as far as the market is concerned, because generally banking has to be managed in a very prudent manner. But with these 5 new licenses coming into market, I think the new players will be able to have more flexibility in experimenting, exploring new ways of doing banking. And as a traditional bank, we definitely can learn a lot from these new 5 new players.
Speaking of learning, Dr. Siew, what can banks also learn from the other digital payment apps out there, the e-wallets? How do they simplify the process for their customers?
Now, that's actually something that the bank is actually watching very closely. Give you an example, right? So you're making payment. Obviously, it's not only payment. Today, if you use your mobile banking app, you can also make payment through QR Pay. But I think what the e-wallet has managed to do is to make it not only offering payment, but actually connect to other services, whereby as far as a customer, if I go to buy something through a e-commerce website, so I don't need to worry about how to pay. I'm more focusing on what is the right product for me. So those are the things that I think banks can learn a lot in terms of how to be more customer focused and how can we do small changes, but very quickly, in order to meet the needs of the customers. So these are a lot of things that the bank are watching closely and learning closely from the e-wallets and new fintech players.
Effendy, let's talk about the incumbents, the banks that we have in Malaysia right now. What should incumbents do to keep pace or stay ahead of the curve with these industry changes?
Yeah, thanks, Rizal, for the question. I think that Siew covered quite a lot of some of the behavioral decisions that banks have to make and to ensure that we continue to evolve. And I do think that a lot of it is very, very important. I think having the right people within the organization to operate in the new world is extremely key. The other thing I think where banks and large incumbents are concerned, we will need to really figure out and understand exactly what the strategy is behind growth and evolution, right? And I think that we have seen banks take this in multiple ways. One is have a very clear view on, I guess, making processes internally better. Second is have a very clear view on hedges, right? And hedges meaning, do we want to expand a little bit into the digital bank space? Do we want to think about being adjacently present in payments, et cetera, but I think it really does matter to ensure that a clear strategy is in place. The other thing also, I think banks need to be very clear about, and certainly we do a lot of that at CIMB, is not get taken in by the fad, right? Which is really the need to stay focused, the need to understand the strengths, but also ensure that you're evolving in many, many ways to compete, right? I do think that if banks stay the way they are today, they'll be unable to compete with players of the future. So it's really making sure that internally, externally, within the business and maybe slightly outside the business, have those core competencies to continue to do a very sustainable business in financial services.
And let's talk about how banks can exist well in an ecosystem, in the current ecosystem, complementing and creating good competition for the benefit of the consumers. Because I think with all these innovations, with all this introduction of new ways of doing things, we have to ensure that the consumers should benefit, right?
Yeah, Rizal, there are 2 parts to your question, right? Which is, one is the idea of competing or complementing with technology companies. I mean, I've always been of the view that the competition or the collaboration between fintech and banking is more than the competition between them, right? And I think that we've always stayed that course. I do think that there's a whole bunch of abilities and services that can be rolled out between these 2 players. And if you look at the examples in North Asia, although, yes, the payments companies like Ali and WeChat Pay, they roll out lending products, but a lot of the times those lending products are backed by the banks, yeah? So I think that this is all about, at the end of the day, drawing back into the second portion of your question, right? Which is how are you evolving to customer demands and how are you evolving to customer asks? And I think that those kinds of evolution will see banking collaborate more with technology, and the winner is going to be the customer, both in terms of rates and more so in terms of experience and usability, right? So I do think that some of the things that the regulators are doing within this country is going to encourage a lot of that. Like today, for us, the Touch and Go e-wallet, the financial services that we put through it are all in collaboration with either banks, insurance companies, asset managers, and I do think that the complementary nature will continue and the winner is going to be the end user or customer.
And thank you very much, Shahul, for that. Riddhi, before we end the interview, let's get a bit from you before we end the interview. Share with us, we've got these two reps from these two banks in Malaysia, but is the trend similar across Asia or across Southeast Asia at least?
I would say broadly similar. Whether it's consumer behaviors, whether it's what banks are doing, whether it's how the competition, more from the neo banks and the so-called new digital banks. I think it's a similar trend that I see across the region. The only thing that which I've not seen as a similar trend is that the way banks are looking at technology and the way banks are looking at standardization of technology as a horizontal platform. Rather, I've seen banks looking at technology as a point or stopgap solution, one thing trying to address one particular problem, rather than looking at platforms which can modernize all of it for you, right? So that's probably the only thing which I've not seen. Some countries are doing it better than others. Wouldn't name which country is doing it better, but there are some countries and some banks who are probably a little bit ahead, and then there are some countries who are still looking at it in a very siloed and piecemeal basis. But I think, what Dr. Siew and Effendy said around digital payments, around competition, I think pretty much bang on across what I see across the region.
On that note, thank you very much, Riddhi, and also Dr. Siew and Shahul for joining us today. Thank you. Dan kita akan berehat seketika, kembali selepas ini.